Good morning, students. I am Prabhakar, your faculty for the subject Social Security Legislation. Students, today we are going to complete section 10 to section 15 under this Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act 1952. In my previous sessions, we have already covered section 1 to section 9. And students, I am going to give you the concept of this act section wise, and in my later on videos I will try to give the brief description of all the latest amendments which has been made in Maternity Benefit Act 1961 or Payment of Gratuity Act 1972 or in PF Act also. Means we are going to see all the latest amendments through a separate video. So students, I am going to start this video of today's with section 10. Section 10 talks about protection against attachment. Here if we want to understand through a law language, then it would be a bit difficult, but I am just telling you the concept in a generalized manner. Protection against attachment means that once you are getting the provident fund amount into your account, then in that concern, or pension fund into your account, then in that concern, at any cost, a law cannot be attach that amount to any other liability of that employee or debt of that employee through any decree made by the law. Means through this act, it has been given a protection to the fund of that employee in case if he is liable to someone, or if he is having any debt in market, then even in that prospect also, if anyone takes him to the court and court gives him a decree to get that amount from that employee, then in that prospect his PF amount or pension related amount cannot be attached to that liability or debt. So this is a good protection. Then section 11 talks about priority of payment of contributions over other debts. Students, in this section it has been said that if any employee gets insolvent, or if he is even going for winding up of his business, even in that scenario also, whatever resources presently he would be having, he has to first settle down all the contributions related to these benefits. Later on he can think for other expenses or other responsibilities. Means he has to give priority over all the debts incurred on him. In place of that, he has to settle down first the contributions related to this account. तो ये important prospect है. This shows the importance of this PF Act 1952 and its implication over the employees. Then section 12, which gives one more protection to the employees. It talks about employer not to reduce wages. Means if any establishment gives facility to this PF Act or pension scheme or employees deposit linked insurance scheme to their employees, it doesn't give authority to that employer to reduce the wages and get more benefits from their prospects. Means if any employee is entitled to have the facility of this act, and in that prospect, if employer is willing to reduce the wages, then in that concern what will happen, that employer cannot reduce that wage knowingly to get more profit from his side. So this is the 12th section. Then in later on in section 13 describes about inspectors. Here you can go through this section also, because in previous acts also we have studied the position of inspector along with their powers, and this position and power remain same even in PF Act also. Then if we see section 14 talks about all the penalties, different kinds of penalties, and if any contravention is being made by the employer, then in that prospect what ranges of penalties are imposed by the law. This has been given under this section 14. I'm just reading out this section so that you can easily understand the different provisions which come under penalties. First one is, whoever for the purpose of avoiding any payment to be made by himself under this act, the scheme or the pension scheme or the insurance scheme, or of enabling any other person to avoid such payment, knowingly makes or causes to be made any false statement or false representation, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with fine of 5,000 rupees, or with both. Means here we can find out that if any employer is making any false representation of data or a false statement, then in that concern he may be punished for the imprisonment of 1 year, or 5,000 rupees fine can also be imposed, or both can be imposed upon him. Then if an employer who contravenes or makes default in complying with the provisions of section 6 or clause A of subsection 3 of section 17 insofar as it relates to the payment of inspection charges, or paragraph 38 of the scheme insofar as it relates to the payment of administrative charges, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, but which shall not be less than 1 year, and a fine of 10,000 rupees. तो यहाँ पे जो है employer, if he makes any contravention related to inspection charges or administrative charges, means if he is not willing to pay the inspection charges or administrative charges, in that kind of contravention he may be punished for a imprisonment of 3 years, or a fine of 10,000 rupees. In case of default in payment of employees contribution which he has been deducted by the employer from the employees wages, अगर वो contributions में employees के contributions में कुछ contraventions करता है, in that case he should be given a punishment of not less than 6 months, a fine of 5,000 rupees in any other case. Then an employer who contravenes or makes default in complying with the provision of section 6C or clause A D of subsection 3A of section 17 insofar as it relates to the payment of inspection charges, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, but which shall not be less than 6 months, and shall also be liable to fine which may extend to 5,000 rupees. So students, through this we can understand that there are different kinds of penalties which may be imposed if any employee or employer contravenes based on the provisions of this act. Then in that prospect he would be penalized. So I hope through this we have covered up to section 14, and in my next video we will start from section 16, and we will try to cover up the remaining portion of PF and Miscellaneous Provision Act 1952. Thank you, students.